What's up? How's it going? Welcome to today's Watch channel, and for this video, I'm gonna be talking about the Rolex Daytona. Let's start the chronograph. Now, the Rolex Daytona. Is it worth it? Is it worth, spending upwards of 15,000 US dollars for this model right here? Maybe a little bit more, maybe $16,000 for this. The current generation, the ceramic Daytonas, they're going for at least maybe 22,000 US dollars for the black dial, 24 for the white dial ceramic Daytona. Is it worth it? Is it worth it for the steel sports, the king of steel sports Rolex, the Rolex Daytona? Is it worth it? That's something that's very subjective. What's anything worth, right? But I guess when you think of it from the point of view of other Rolex sports watches, like the Rolex Explorer 2, the Daytona is probably trading about 4 times more than the Rolex Explorer 2. It's very expensive. It really is expensive. As a matter of fact, at the Rolex Daytona, at that price range, you could probably get a steel AP Royal Oak. Not the jumbo, but you can get a variant of the AP Royal Oak. Right? And is it worth it? And I think that can only be answered from what perspective you have, right? From the perspective of, someone who just likes steel sports Rolexes. No, the Daytona is very expensive. The Rolex Explorer 2, in terms of build quality, is just as good as the Rolex Daytona. It's still a Rolex. It's built to the same standards. Well, to be fair, I would say the dial of the Daytona is a lot more intricate than the Explorer 2. But in terms of the quality, they use the exact same steel, and the finishing is up to par. However, when you think of it from the point of view of a steel sports watch in the watch industry, right? There are basically 3 main watches, right? The Rolex Daytona being one of them. The other would be the AP Royal Oak Jumbo, and of course, the Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711. The Jumbo is probably trading for close to 40,000 US dollars. The Nautilus is trading for, I don't know, 60,000, 65,000. I've seen 70,000 US dollars for the Nautilus, but that's definitely come down. I'd say probably about 65,000 US dollars, and that's still 3 times that of the Rolex Daytona. So from that point of view, the Rolex Daytona is relatively affordable, right? If you're looking for the best steel sports Rolex. And to be quite frank and honest, I would be more confident wearing the Rolex Daytona to do sports as opposed to the Nautilus or the Jumbo. So the Rolex Daytona is more true to form when you're talking about steel sports luxury, right? It's robust, it's highly functional. It's got a chronograph. So from that point of view, it is, I guess you could say, I'm not going to use the word cheap, but it's the least expensive option compared to the Jumbo and the Nautilus. And it's a beautiful watch. It really is. But, I have mixed feelings about the Daytona. Should it be that expensive? Obviously, Rolex has limited the supply of it, right? It's created this demand for it by limiting its supply. And is it right for doing so? Well, Rolex can do whatever the hell it wants to, right? It simply limits the supply because Rolex doesn't want everybody to be sporting a Rolex Daytona, a steel sports Daytona. Right? It has to be exclusive. It has to be unattainable from the masses. Right now, if you want to buy a Daytona straight from the AD, you gotta, you gotta be a somebody, I guess, right? You gotta know somebody, or you gotta, spend a significant amount of money. You gotta be a high roller. You gotta be a big spender in order to get one of these brand new. Right? You have to have a certain amount of spending power. And I guess that's what that's what the image it gives, right? And I do not support that, but I do kind of understand, right? There has to be a certain level of exclusivity when it comes to the Rolex Daytona. Right? Anybody can go into the AD and buy a two-tone Datejust, right? That's for anybody. Right. However, you got to be a somebody to pick one of these up at retail. Right. I'm just a regular guy, and there's no way I could afford to attain one of these brand new at the AD. I don't have connections. I don't have the huge, the deep pockets to splash down. I don't know, $200,000 at an AD. I gotta buy this pre-owned, and I thought it was a lot of money back then. Right, I've owned this piece for 3 years, and it was a lot of money back then. But I knew it was the time to get it, because that was when the ceramic Daytona was released, and I realized that a lot of people would want to trade in their current generation, the 116520, for the ceramic Daytona, and that was when I decided to pick one up. It was now or never. I had always wanted a Rolex Daytona, and I have to say I have no regrets. Right, it's one of those watches which is probably the only watch where my expectations for it were so high and it was met. Did the Rolex Daytona exceed my expectations? No, I think it met my expectations for what it was. So is it an overvalued watch? Well, that's only for you to say. They're obviously very expensive right now. And do I foresee it? Do I foresee the price of the Daytona ever dropping? Ever so slightly due to market forces, but I think out of all the ceramic Rolexes, the Daytona will hold its value the best, simply because they kept the dimensions the same. They only replaced the steel bezel with a ceramic one. And therefore, it's a very, very wearable watch for all wrist sizes, for all ethnicities. It is an amazing watch, right? The Rolex Daytona. I've said it. I think it's actually worth the money. The Rolex Daytona. Truly an aspirational piece. Is it a victim of its own success? Yeah. Just like the Submariner or the GMT. There can be a lot of negative connotations placed on the Rolex Daytona. But, there's just something about the Daytona, when I see someone in the wild sporting a Submariner or GMT, I'm like, okay, cool, nice watch. But when I see someone with a Daytona, it just it says something else, right? It just does. There's just a bigger impact, because when you're talking Rolex Daytona, you are on dare I say, a different league, right? Because you picked the Rolex when you could have picked an AP, right? And that's a harder question, I feel, right? Do you go Rolex Daytona or do you go AP Royal Oak, right? Because you could. could. So anyway, that's just my rant on the Rolex Daytona. Is it worth the money? Is it not worth the money? Is it overvalue, overhype? Is it, what's anything worth anyway? Just let me know what you think about the Rolex Daytona. I think it can be a very polarizing watch. You know, what does it say? You know, does it say that you're a watch collector, enthusiast, aficionado? I don't know. But anyway, thanks for watching. You made it here, and I'm Dave, and I'm out. Bye.